All right, hi everyone. This is the video for week 4 in Writing Beyond the Academy. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the expression of interest assessment. That's assessment 2. Essentially introduce you to what we're thinking about for you in terms of pitching your story, the story that you want to write for Writing Beyond the Academy. Remembering that we're simulating writing for the conversation here. So when we get you to pitch, we're doing what the editors of the conversation will get you to do when you pitch to them. So what I'm going to do is explain the pitching process to you just quickly, and then we'll go and have a look at the pitch form that you'll fill out, kind of similar to the KT survey. We'll get you to fill out a little form, just like you would if you were pitching a story to the conversation. You'd fill out a little form, basically with a couple of text boxes explaining what you want to do with the story. Okie dokie. So what we're interested in terms of pitching stories to editors is, in a very, very short space of time, being able to explain why the story that you want to write is interesting and timely, what it contains, and in particular, what the take-home message of the story is. For an editor, if you can see what an author wants to do with a story, that is, with the take-home message that the author wants to drive forward with the story, as an editor, if you can see that clearly, it's really easy for you to make a yes or no decision. And I should say, if you can see the take-home message, it's probably a yes decision as an editor. Whereas if you can't see the take-home message clearly, if it's a bit muddy, if you're not sure what it is, if the author just hasn't explained what they want to do with the article, it's harder for you as an editor to be able to say yes to that. So what we want to think about a little bit to start with is what we're trying to do when we pitch a story. All right, so the first thing that we always want to think about when we're writing is who's the reader here, or who are the readers? And in the case of pitching a story, although ultimately the story that you're going to be writing is for a public audience, the pitch is a piece of writing that is for the editors. And this is something that will happen when you write academic journal articles as well. Sometimes when you write academic journal articles, you need to contact the editors of a journal beforehand to see if they're interested in receiving your draft before you even send it to them. And so essentially what you're doing in those contexts is pitching your scientific, your scholarly article to an academic publisher, to a journal, to a colleague. Usually the editors of academic journals are colleagues. Here, though, in Writing Beyond the Academy, where we're simulating writing for the conversation, your reader, the reader of your pitch, is an editor. So that's me and Jack and Marina, essentially. And we're pretending to be editors. Although I should say that we're not really pretending to be editors here, because we do actually publish a journal, a magazine, I guess you might call it, called Future Research Masters. In fact, I might just have a quick look at the website for that at the end of this video. I would say remind me, but obviously I'm recording. So the reader of our pitch is the editor. That means that you straight away know who you're writing for and what their expectation is, and their expectation is clarity of what the story is going to be about. They're not going to be interested in your qualifications, in this context, that is, in the context of writing for a public audience. They're not going to be interested in your qualifications per se, as much as they are in the story that you want to write. So the brief for us here is that you're pitching to editors who are responsible for publishing work that explains scholarly and scientific research to general public audiences. And in terms of thinking about that, what you're trying to do is articulate a story that will appeal to people who are not paid to read your work, who are very busy, have limited time to read stories, so the articles are going to be very short. Just make sure both my hands get in the frame there. People who aren't researchers, people who don't have the same kind of knowledge of the subject matter that you do, but who probably want to know something about it. who are curious, intellectually engaged. So when you're writing to the editors, what you're trying to do is say, I know some stuff about something, and I want to tell people like that about this stuff, and this is why I think it's interesting. Cool. So when we think about this, that we being me and Jack and Marina and others who teach with this in the MRes cause too, when we think about that problem of explaining to an editor and then going on to write a story, it's a kind of threefold problem. It's a problem of what's the hook, the thing that catches people's attention about the story. What's the substance? What's the actual detail that you want to explain? What is the story actually about, rather than some kind of clickbaity title, which we want to avoid, I would say. What's the story actually going to be saying, which we refer to as substance, and then the sometimes the most difficult part of writing a story is what we refer to as flow, and flow is essentially the craft of writing, and it doesn't mean like being poetic. It doesn't mean being flowery. It just means flow refers to arranging words so that it's easy for the reader to keep on reading, so that they don't trip over your sentences, so they don't get confused. And for those of you who are doing Researcher Development 1 this semester, you can cast your minds back to the work that we went through in week 0 by Swan and Gopin about reader attention theory. Reader expectation theory, and particularly about how you use the structure of sentences to emphasize or de-emphasize certain parts of the sentence. That's what we're referring to when we use the words flow. So those three things that we're interested in: hook, the hook of the story, the substance of the story, and the flow of the story. Obviously, for the purposes of pitching, what you're mostly going to be developing for assessment 2, for the expression of interest, to pitch the story, is the hook and the substance, or at least an idea of the substance that you want to explain. Even if you haven't fleshed it out, you know the kind of you want to be able to know the bullet points that you would like to go through in the story. I'm not sure what happened there. So just to remind us, this is where I was up to, wasn't it? Yes. Just to remind us, this is what the inbox of somebody who works for the conversation, the pitch inbox of somebody who works for the conversation looks like. It's hundreds of pitches, essentially, coming in, each of which the editor needs to look at, but only has a very limited amount of time to be able to make a yes-no decision with which to get back to the author and say, yes, I would like you to write that story. Please start writing it. Here are some kind of instructions for you. Or no, it sounds really interesting, but we're just not interested in that at the moment, for whatever reason. And you can see, this is a really kind of beautifully brutal picture of an inbox, and this picture was supplied to us by Sunny Cray from the conversation, by the way. That here you have very limited space in which to grab the editor's attention and start explaining to them what the story that you want to write is about. So you can see that the first words after new pitch are basically the beginning of a sentence explaining the article. And that's how we've set up the form that we get you to fill out for the expression of interest, is that the first thing that we'll see is this essentially a one-sentence version in which you explain the take-home message. So whenever you're kind of writing, I mean, for this assessment, but also whenever you're producing writing that is going to be submitted along with lots of other works from other people, It's really worth keeping in mind that it's this kind of picture that the person who's responsible for reading your work is going to have. That they're going to have they're going to have a lot of things to deal with, and this is one of the reasons why it's a great idea to pay really careful attention to things like instructions for submission, but also really careful attention to the way you use words so that you make it really easy for the person trying to figure out, should I say yes or no in this context? Should I say yes or no to your story? So if you look at this list of stories here, I don't know if you can read them or not, but I'll put these slides on views. The top one there, it says, the article will criticise the law's permissive approach to the challenging ... and we don't know what else is there. But already as an editor, I think, cool, I don't know what that's about. There are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 words there. And apart from something about the law, I have no idea. But if you look at the next one down, how international factors, not Islam, could de-democratize Muslim states, and there's with ... So there's more to it, but already, like, I've got international factors, Islam, and democracy going on right there. So that author pitching to the conversation has really packed lots of detail into their pitch sentence. And I'll go over that in a bit, the context in which you have to do that. But that's a great strategy. What you're doing when you do that is make it really easy for the editor to see and understand what you're trying to do. So keep this kind of thing in mind whenever you have to submit work along with lots of other people. Like, really, really do your best to make it easy for the person to see where you want to go and what you're trying to do. So, the expression of interest assessment that we have set you. What it is a form, much like the KT survey, and what you'll be doing is explaining the piece to us. Oh, wow, look at that artifact there. I'm not sure what that is. Let's correct that. Boom. Live editing, there it is. So it's a form, and they're essentially, apart from like your name and email address and student number, there are essentially 5 text fields and one radio button field where you're going to pitch the story to us. The first field is a single sentence explainer of the article, particularly the take-home message of the article. What we're interested, that's the first part of that inbox there, is this, like that section there is what that first text box is going to be. Ideally what you want is it should be a single sentence, and it should be a single sentence that is the take-home message that you envisage your readers will get from the article. That is, like when you think about somebody reading your article, you think, well, what do I want them to kind of stand up and walk over to tell their friends about when they finish the article? You want your reader to, in this context, in a public audience context, you want them to kind of, sit back and stand up and walk over to their friends or whatever and say, oh, I just read this really interesting article about XYZ. So what's XYZ? Like, what's the thing that you want your readers to be talking about? The knowledge that you want them to acquire because you've written your story. And as a tip, like keep it short but full of information. If you write a sentence that's 50 words, that's a really long sentence. And it may well be the case that that's what you need to do to explain the take-home message of the story that you want to write. But I would suggest to you that, generally speaking, good pitch sentences are shorter. They're usually very simple. And if you want some tips, like look at the article titles of the conversation. Often, certainly not always, but often the article titles of articles in the conversation are essentially take-home messages. The second text box we'll get you to fill out is an explainer of why the story is interesting or timely for a non-academic audience. Like, why is this something that people should read? Is essentially how you can understand your work there. Like, explain that. So if you remember Sunny's conversation with us in week 2, she showed the example of that article that pitch that said something along the lines of, April 30th marks 1 year since longline shark baiting was dismissed, or something like that, right? So there was something going on in the world. There was an event, and their story was going to help explain the event. Now, not everyone's going to have an event that they can help explain, but there's believe every subject matter has some way of connecting to why it's interesting for people, either by helping us to understand something better, by helping us to see the complexities of things, or simply because it's an explainer piece and it gives us some more information. So the third, moving on, the third text box that you'll go through are the key points that you want to make in the story. That is the key information in addition to the take-home message. And it may be just the take-home message again, so don't be afraid of that if it's just a single piece of information. Then we're interested in you getting to write a working title for us, like what you think the title of the story might be. And again, that might be really similar to the pitch sentence that you've written. That's perfectly okay if that's the case for you. Go ahead and do the same text. Perfectly okay. But think about it. Try and think about what the title should be. And remember that a title is that kind of first that opening act where you're communicating with your reader and you're saying, here's what the story's about. Here's what I'm signaling to you that I'm going to be talking about in this story. And then we want you to develop some subheadings for the story. Many of you in your KT surveys commented about how useful subheadings were for you, the reader, to see how the story was broken up and see how it tried to deal with different subject matter as it moved through towards the end. So we want you to think about what kinds of subheads might you put in your story. Now, we won't hold you to those when you write your draft. It's a way, though, of getting you to think about how might I articulate to an editor what my story is going to be about, but also a way of prompting you to start thinking about the actual substance and content and structure of the article that you want to write for this unit. And then finally, we get you to select one of the three types of story as per David Banks' typology, which I think I have on the next page. Yeah, here we are. Oh, wow, that's rendered strangely. Theory or concept X will help you understand why. Event or situation, or 2, obscure debate about X between A and B should be important to Y. That's the hardest one, I would say. And then 3, just a summary of original research, or that'd be like an explainer piece, essentially. Either your own research or somebody else's. Probably for most of you, it'd be like an explainer about a field of research or a particular topic or a discovery or a theory or something like that. Okie dokie. So that's the end of the presentation. Have a sip of tea. Let's have a look now at the form. So this is it. This is the second page of the form. After you filled out your details, essentially, this is the second page. And you can see I've got a bit of placeholder text because I was playing around with it before. But essentially, what you're going to do is, in one sentence, actually, why don't I zoom in a bit here? It's not working. Okay. One sentence. What's the take-home message of your story? Super easy. Text box here that you fill out. Obviously, we won't let you submit the form if you don't fill it out. Just with some data validation. Wider FRM is Future Research Masters. Oh, there's my reminder. I will look that up in a second, so you can see the website that we have in which you can publish your story if you so choose, so desire. Wider Future Research Masters readers need to know about this story, like what makes the story interesting for them. There you want to explain, like, what's timely, why is it good to know this? What key points and examples will you use to support your argument? So that's, new research or a new take on something. some event that's going on, some facts that you want to relay, stuff like that. The proposed title of the article, again with my placeholder text, ARST, just for the nerds in the room like me. ARST are the 4 keys in a row. If I put my left hand on the home row and do, type like that, that's ARST. I don't have a QWERTY keyboard. I have a Colmac keyboard. Super nerdy. And then finally the subheadings. And here, a few people commented to me that they were concerned that with the KT survey, their paragraph structure when they submitted the form was lost. Don't worry, it might look like that to you, but it doesn't look like that to us. It retains that structure when we look at when the form returns to us. It retains this kind of paragraph structure. You can see I've just added in like thing 1, I'll explain stuff. Thing 2, I'll explain other stuff. If I just delete that, you can see it just looks like a single line text box. So you can type stuff, and then a break for another subhead, whatever. And then choosing the type of narrative that you think the story might be. And finally, you would submit, and you would be done. Very easy. So, obviously we'll be going over this in tutorials and workshopping the material that you have in tutorials. So start developing these things. Start developing your 1-sentence pitch. Start developing your kind of ideas about why you think this is an interesting story for people. Start developing what you think you'll use as examples, the subheads, the title of the article, and bring that material to the tutorials that will be running from now until a few weeks into the future. Now, though, I should look at Future Research Masters. So there it is, futureresearchmasters.org. Hey, here it is now. Ladies and gentlemen, these are stories published by MRes students and put up here on the web. These are stories written as part of Writing Beyond the Academy. What used to be called Research Literacies is now called Writing Beyond the Academy. These are actual stories that people developed in the unit and that we helped kind of make heaps good, and that they're published on our website here. We're really proud of this. A bunch of MRes students who came through in 2018 helped develop this. And as part of the unit internship and community engagement, Felicity Dunbar, Pete Spradbrough, and Boyana Phyllis. And it's really, really cool. So we encourage you, if you're interested, to similarly publish. If we have a look what the story looks like, it's very pretty. Let's check out the start here. What is digital? So this is an explainer piece, obviously. What is decoding the digital humanities? What is the digital humanities? DHs. Let's use the subheads. Ooh, broken image. Dear oh dear, that's what happens on the internet, isn't it? Super exciting. Good old Beck Wardra, I think she's doing a PhD with us now, or just about to start a PhD. And you can see we've got links, to the socials, so you can get heaps famous if you publish a story. I should say one of these stories got a lot of republishing. Which one was it? I forget. It may have been this one. Look at that, 107 shares. That's incredible. MRes student writing a public audience essay shared 107 times more. I think it got, I think it might have been republished somewhere or got spread around on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. Heaps of reads, like 5,000 reads or something, I think. Anyway, that is it for this video. Remember to start developing your EOI, your expression of interest. Start developing the one-sentence pitch. Start developing the story that you think you want to write, and bring that work to class so we can help you develop it further. Until then, everyone, have a great week. We're coming up on the Easter break pretty soon, or the mid-semester break, I should say. It's the Easter long weekend now. It's Good Friday today, which is why I'm drinking a cup of tea, because I came in here to record this with a hot cross bun and a cup of tea, but I've finished my hot cross bun now. So, have a good weekend, have a good week, have a good time, and we'll see you in class.